Welcome to this episode of The Common Sense Skeptic, our first of 2022. It's been a pretty amazing year for us, and we did hit our 40,000 subscriber goal just before New Year's. With your help, we're looking at nailing down that 100,000 subscriber YouTube silver play button by this time next year. Over the course of the past year, we've covered a bunch of different topics. Sure, there's been a lot about Musk, some episodes directly targeting him and his legal troubles. Others were mainly cursory references, especially when it comes to farming on or colonizing Mars. The numbers we ran for those episodes will be true of any agency or organization that attempts it. And of course, we did a deep dive on the clowns from Orbital Assembly Corporation, who just wrapped up their second funding round on netcapital.com and managed to not even raise a quarter of the money they were looking for. In fact, they raised less money than they did last time, so maybe people are finally wising up to their shenanigans. Now, where Orbital Assembly had just one scam in the works, pretty much everything Musk has his hands in is a scam in one way or another. Yet Musk still managed to land the cover of Time magazine's Person of the Year. That really didn't make any sense at all until you realized that the owner of Time magazine, another rotund billionaire by the name of Mark Benioff, is buddy-buddy with Musk and a major investor in SpaceX. So despite his shady dealings and crypto manipulation and lawsuits and live tweeting when he takes a shit, Musk got his face on the cover of Time magazine yet again, keeping up with Time's unfailing resolve to honor only the best and brightest of humanity with their year-end publication. Just look at some of their past winners demonstrating the best that humanity had to offer. Musk seems to be in really good company. To show how undeserving of recognition Musk truly is, we are going to take a very recent claim he made while doing an interview with the Babylon Bee, who we normally enjoy the satire of. But the interviewers were obviously not up to speed with Musk's false statements and compulsive lying, so they mistakenly let him completely slide as he rambled on, making one nonsense claim after another, including this one.
The heavy lifting on energy generation will be solar, roughly a little over 100 miles by 100 miles, a section of land with solar panels would power the entire United States. So like a little corner of Utah or Texas.
This is almost as ridiculous a claim as the scammy solar freaking roadways, which has yet to do anything whatsoever, despite promising project after project and receiving money non-stop from oblivious organizations like the US DOT and the DoD. They've raked millions in from Indiegogo, another $2.5 million on Start Engine by selling shares of a company that have never produced any viable solar tech. Their installation at Sandpoint hasn't produced solar energy for years now, and the real-time monitoring has been yanked off of the Sandpoint website. According to SFR's 2021 year-end report, since inception in 2006, they have never advanced beyond R&D, and they have been sucking up as much grant money as possible to enrich the only two shareholders in the company. Solar freaking roadways was going to power the entire nation by making highways that absorbed and processed sunlight. But Musk says you don't need to do that. He says a plot of land 100 miles by 100 miles in a small corner of either Utah or Texas is all it would take to power the entire continental US. He makes this claim a lot, actually. October 2020, Torque News put out this obvious video about the topic. Inverse reported it the previous January, Popular Mechanics the previous December. The earliest mention of this from Musk seems to go back 7 years to May of 2015, right at the same time that he unveiled the Powerwall. And it was brought up again repeatedly 5 years ago in July of 2017, right around the same time Musk was gutting Solar City and laying off thousands of employees after the Tesla bailout. Surely these are both coincidences. At any rate, for 7 years he's been getting away with dropping this nonsense on people in interviews without any serious challenges to this assertion. And that's going to change right now. We're going to go back to basics with this one and run the numbers to see if that area would, in fact, be able to power the US, what that would likely cost, and what Musk failed to take into consideration. First, we have to pick a site. We'll compare the southern Utah city of St. George against a site not far from Musk's rocket disaster zone in the southeastern tip of Texas. From the website run by Solar Resource Compass, we found that Utah, on average, has more sunlight energy hitting it than South Texas, so we're going to use Utah for the breakdown. Considering Musk is planning on building a 250 megawatt gas-fired electricity generation plant for his operations in Boca Chica, instead of installing a giant solar energy farm, it seems more fitting as well. So here's Utah. Musk flippantly assigned a path of land 100 miles by 100 miles to this concept. A stretch of land 100 miles by 100 miles is not 100 square miles as some people on Twitter thought. It is 10,000 square miles. Standing in the middle of that plot of land, the panels would literally stretch 15 times further than you can see in all directions owing to the curvature of the Earth. In fact, it would take up 12% of the entire state, destroy 12% of wildlife habitat, displace water catchment, as well as run across several federal nature areas and Native American reserves. And Utah isn't exactly flat, although for this exercise we'll pretend it is. 10,000 square miles breaks down into 6.4 million acres, or 278,780,000,000 square feet. In metric, that's 25,900 square kilometers, 2.59 million hectares, or 25.9 billion square meters. That gives us the area we need to cover. Now the question is, what are we going to cover it in? It's Musk. Of course he's going to use the Tesla-branded solar panels he lets China build for him. And we know from the Tesla website that these units measure 74.4 inches, a little over 6 feet, by 41.2 inches. Depth of the unit doesn't matter. That gives us a surface area of 21.3 square feet, or 1.96 square meters. These panels each create a peak energy output of 400 watts. Since solar irradiance at sea levels is 1 kilowatt per square meter, their claim is that these panels have a 20% efficiency across the 2 square meter surface, which is no better than other equipment on the market with better reputations. In fact, it turns out Tesla products don't even rank in the top 5. Correction, make that the top 20 units on the market. On SolarReviews.com, you won't find Tesla-branded panels or products anywhere on their ranking chart. Food for thought if you're thinking about going solar. At any rate, Musk made the claim, so we'll use his below-average panels for the purposes of this experiment, and we'll mount them side by side, touching each other across the entire area. If you use the figure for square feet for the imperial measurement and the square meter calculation for the metric measurements on the panels required to cover the area, both calculations come to a number in the neighborhood of 13 billion units. The cost of 13 billion Tesla solar panels at retail, at around $683 each, only about $8,879 billion. Let's call it 9 trill. Each of these units generates up to 400 watts of energy at peak, giving a total of 5.2 terawatts, if the sun is hitting all of those panels dead flat all day long at full strength, which of course is never going to happen. See, as the sun traverses the sky, the angle its energy hits solar panels at changes, and that significantly alters the amount these panels are able to absorb. Let's turn this diagram on its side. 1 square meter of solar energy receives 1 kilowatt per square meter when hit dead on. That will only be approximately 70% or 700 watts at a 45-degree angle, dropping to a little over 48% when that angle is at 60 degrees. So that makes the 5.2 terawatt number meaningless. Let's approach it a different way. Let's start with the amount of energy we need and work backwards. According to Statistica, the annual consumption of electricity in the US for 2020 was just short of 4,000 billion kilowatt hours. The proper way to prefix this is 4 petawatts. That's a lot of juice. Divided by days in a year, that's an average of almost 11 terawatts daily. This is equivalent to 20% of global electricity production for a country that has only 330 million of the 7.8 billion people on this planet. 4% of the population using 1/5 of its total electricity generation. And that number will only continue to climb as adoption of EVs in the States becomes more widely accepted. 4 petawatts divided by the population of the US, that's over 12 megawatt hours per year, or 32 kilowatt hours per day per person. That's the simple math, and it's backed up by the per capita chart found on Wikipedia, equivalent to 23 60-watt light bulbs left on for 24 hours per day. Now, to be fair, they have not separated out residential from industrial electricity with this, so that's not what people are using in their home on a daily basis. It's per capita, meaning total use divided by total population, in case that distinction needed to be made. Rounding up slightly, 11 terawatt hours need to be generated daily, with more than half of that being stored. In St. George, Utah, the shortest day of the year, the baseline as it were, has only 9.5 hours between sunrise and sunset. So the facility has only 9.5 hours to store the 14.5 hours it will need to get through the day, or about 60% of the power needed over the course of the day to accommodate nighttime requirements. We'll need 1.157 terawatts per hour captured constantly while the sun is up. 4.4 terawatt hours using 9.5 hours of sunlight is 463 megawatts per hour captured constantly to use straight away. 6.6 terawatt hours using 9.5 hours of sunlight is another 695 megawatts per hour captured constantly to store. But there is no constant where the sun is concerned. There's the sun's path across the sky, there's cloudy days, rainy days, snowy days. At best, you're looking at an average of 50% efficiency if the panels track the sun, and half that again if the panels are stationary. So we'll take the 1.157 terawatt requirement per hour and divide it by the 400 watts each panel maxes out at. Leaves us with 2.893 billion panels. Roughly double that number according to the graph of daily solar irradiance along the timeline of a day takes us to 5.786 billion. Roughly double it again to account for the fact the panels will be stationary, and that number rises to 11.572 billion panels. Not far off the 13 billion determined at the outset. And at 1.96 square meters per unit, that gives us an area of 22,677.2 square kilometers, comparable to the footprint Musk used of 25,900, in the ballpark. But it seems that is where his thinking process terminates, one chart deep. See, that's the number if all these panels are one contiguous sheet of units, all mounted flush to each other, which of course they won't be. So we're going to take the level of thinking required here a little bit further. Taking a look at any of these solar farms, there are main access roads and smaller access corridors between rows of panels. Some of these farms use less than half of their footprint for the panels themselves. Some are tighter together. Let's say on average 50% of the land is taken up by these dead spaces, and that doubles the required footprint. Instead of a square footprint measuring 151 kilometers or 94 miles on each face, you're looking at 213 kilometers or 133 miles per face. This is how much of Utah we're taking up at this point, about 20% of the state. And so far we've only tackled the panel requirements for real estate, which at $20,000 per acre would carry another bill of $226 billion. These calculations do not allow for any margin of error, excess energy in reserve, or major system failures. It also doesn't account for transmission losses over distance of the energy, which we'll get to shortly, or other losses in the system, including loss in the storage devices, which we'll get to now. Some of these losses will be negated somewhat when the system is not operating on the shortest days of the year. One of the things we need to remember is that these panels don't last forever, and their efficiency dies over time at 1% per year. Industry standard for solar panels is replacing them every 25 years, so 11 to 13 billion panels every 25 years is 1.21 million new panels per day. That's also 1.21 million panels per day that will need to be recycled, and solar panels are extremely toxic to break down, which is why even with the very small number in service now, that backlog is creating recycling issues. So we know that during winter, this site will have to generate an absolute minimum of 11 terawatt hours to sustain energy for a single day. Minimum, otherwise the system will be completely drained every night and will have to start from scratch. Now, Tesla has an industrial battery created for use for commercial purposes. Tesla declares they are decades ahead of their competitors in this space, and that's why they need Chinese manufacturers to provide their batteries for them for use in these systems. The Megapack specs are available online, although pricing was a little trickier to track down. A Megapack measures around 24 feet long, around 7 meters, and 5 feet or 1.6 meters across. Each one weighs 23 tons and can hold 3 megawatt hours of energy. Here's a drone photo for one of the installations that Tesla built for Angleton, Texas, a 200 megawatt hour facility. These megapacks are positioned in groups of 4. If we use the length of a double unit at 48 feet to extrapolate the dimensions of the footprint, we find that this footprint required for 80 units is 195 feet across and 170 feet deep, giving a footprint of 33,150 square feet, about 3/4 of an acre, or 3,080 square meters, 0.308 hectares. 11 terawatt hours required divided by 3 megawatt hours per unit means the system needs an array of 3.7 million megapacks to store the energy required to hold the system steady for a single day. Each one of these units carries an uninstalled cost of roughly $1 million, so only another $3.7 trillion worth of batteries to add to the tally. Uninstalled. If 80 units takes up 3,080 square meters, 3.7 million of them will take up a footprint of another 142,450,000 square meters, 142.45 square kilometers, or 55 square miles. Another swath of land that extends much further than the eye can see, and certainly far bigger than Musk's declaration since 2017 that the battery farm required for this could be a single square mile. At 23 tons per unit, that's 85.1 million tons of weight worth of refined materials, with lithium at the core of the technology. And the annual lithium production across the planet in 2020 was 82,000 metric tons. Between 2010 and 2020, the entire planet harvested only 564,500 tons of lithium in a full decade. Finding out how much of a battery is comprised of lithium is no easy chore. Numbers vary, percentages per manufacturer are inconsistent, but what we found was this. A 70 kilowatt hour Tesla EV battery uses 63 kilograms of lithium carbonate, and by weight, that comes to 12 kilograms in lithium. Reverse the math, and that's around 170 grams per kilowatt hour. Each megapack has a 3 megawatt hour storage unit, so if the ratio is the same, you're looking at 515 kilograms of lithium per megapack, or a little over half a ton. Since it was determined the required battery storage was 3.7 million megapacks at 550 kilos per unit, the lithium requirement alone would be for 1.91 million tons of lithium, or over 3.5 times the entire global production of lithium for the past decade. But not to worry, because Musk seems to think he can use table salt and mud to make up the difference, to the befuddlement of many scientists working in those industries. Check out this clip from Battery Day 2020.
Every vehicle in the United States can be converted to electric using only lithium that is available in the United States. We can actually use table salt, sodium chloride, to basically extract the lithium from the ore.
And of course, Musk has not proven that declaration of ability as yet, nor do we expect him to. Another aspect of this concept that seems to be completely disregarded when Musk makes such a nonsense claim is the fact that if you have a central facility, you would need to create transmission facilities and infrastructure for distributing this massive amount of energy nationwide. A typical simplified electricity infrastructure looks something like this: the power generation station, whatever that may be, step-up transformer to bring the energy to an optimized level for transmission through the power lines to a receiving substation at the opposite end, which then sends energy out to distribution substations, then local circuits to transformers, which condition the power for the end user. While all the local circuits for power delivery are already in place, it is the cost of establishing high-energy transmission lines from our central point that would need to be created. The solar farm at the center of this is dealing with energy measured in terawatts. There is no facility on this planet presently dealing with energy at this level. It would require brand new, heavy-gauge technology. The largest nuclear power plant in the world is the Bruce Generation Station in Ontario, Canada. It has a nameplate capacity of 6,550 megawatts, 6.55 gigawatts. Annual net output is 48,169 gigawatt hours, or 48 terawatt hours annually. This plant, as of 2008, uses 3 double-circuit 500 kV transmission lines to feed major load centers in southern Ontario, and 3 double-circuit 230 kV lines to service the local area to distribute the output of this 6.55 gigawatt facility. And with Musk's solar farm, we're looking at distributing terawatts, not gigawatts. For argument's sake, and this will be completely ridiculously conservative compared to what would actually need to be built, let's say we are stringing a single set of circuits between Utah and a central point for each state for distribution throughout the state. We'll use the known costs for 500 kV double circuit lines and 230 kV double circuit lines, such as are used by the Bruce station, using 3 of each. We took this map and figured out how many kilometers of each one we would require, if the lines could be run as a straight shot between Utah and the state central point. And it turns out we're looking at around 88,700 kilometers or 55,440 miles of lines. At an average of $5.1 million per mile, a set of 3 double-circuit 500 kV lines would run around $865 billion. And at roughly $3 million per line on the 230 kV double circuits, another $500 billion. So, added up, that's $1.365 trillion on this tally. Then on top of this, you need the cost of the source collection station and distribution stations and every receiving substation, running those costs up even higher. Not to mention more land acquisition throughout the country to run these new lines. All of these equations and breakdowns have assumed 100% efficiency in a number of areas, including solar panel efficiency remaining constant, battery efficiency remaining constant, no losses when storing energy to the batteries, no losses when inserting battery power back into the system, and no losses in the transmission lines from the solar farm to the end user. Actual stats in this regard would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% per year decline in the efficiency of the panels, 10% loss in a round trip for energy brought into and out of a battery according to the Powerwall specs is usually around 20%. The percentage decline in the battery's ability to charge to full capacity, and Tesla batteries are notorious for their inconsistency in this regard. And depending on the gauge of transmission line, every 100 miles or 160 kilometers of line will cost you between 1 and 4% of the energy you put into the system, unless you're using a 765 kV line, and that's just rough numbers. There will also be losses at every substation, along every circuit line, and through the service transformer before the step-down energy reaches the end user. There's a graph on insiderenergy.org which lays out the average electricity losses by state, which is kind of neat, ranging from Wyoming with 2.2% losses to Idaho, which already loses 13.3% in transmission alone. And every time you incur a percentage loss, the solar farm at the source will have to be that much bigger. Now, we've gone through this entire exercise, and you may be asking, what is the point of all this? No one in their right mind, or even Musk, would consider building a giant centralized solar array such as this in one concentrated area, as Musk so flippantly threw out there on the interview without being challenged by any of the boys at the table. Well, here's the thing. Whether you're doing this as a centralized facility, or one facility per state, or one facility per county, or even one system per household, most of the numbers do not change. To generate that much power, you still need that many solar panels, that many replacement panels, that production capacity. To store the energy required for nighttime and emergency use, you still need that much battery storage. The only numbers that change significantly are the transmission line towers and substation cost, which will drop each time you fragment the system down into smaller and smaller pieces, making individual per household solar generation the most economical by far. This does not require gigantic distribution and substations, unheard of gauges of transmission lines, neighborhood substations, step-down transformers, none of it. Just panels on your roof storing excess energy in a good old Panasonic Powerwall for when the sun doesn't shine. So the real question is, if this is the most economical way of going solar, why hasn't everybody already done it yet? And the answer is simple, it is not feasible. Anyone under the impression that the US is going to a 100% renewable energy paradigm is oblivious to reality. Sure, the sun gives us almost unlimited energy for free, but the equipment infrastructure required to capture this energy is not. And not only is this equipment not free, it doesn't last forever. Not the batteries, not the panels. Both will have to be replaced at regular intervals or whenever they break. Now, interestingly enough, nature has provided a means by which electric energy can be captured in a cyclical fashion, and that is through hydropower generation. Captured water flows through a dam, spins a turbine, creating electricity, then spills out and down the regular watercourse. The sun then evaporates that water, which falls as rain in the mountains behind the dam, which catches the water to repeat the cycle. In times of peak demand, additional turbines can be flooded. In times of diminished need, spillway gates can be sealed to hold back water for when that demand increases again. Hydro provides the most constant, naturally assisted, renewable energy on the planet. It runs day and night, on cloudy days, and not even a winter's freeze stops it. And if hydro is not available, nuclear is your best bet. It's not a renewable form of energy, but it is extremely constant and extremely potent. Unfortunately for the world, it was introduced to the power of the atom as a bomb, rather than as an energy source, so it has always had that negative connotation assigned to it. There are only 441 nuclear power plants worldwide, and they produce 10% of global output. Solar, wind, and tidal are far less reliable and of course require storage aspects in the system for when the wind is still or the sun doesn't shine. Finally, going back to a point we made earlier with reference to lithium supply, attaching this point to America's proposed transition to battery electric vehicles. If the annual global mining production of lithium is 82,000 tons, and each EV's 70 kilowatt-hour battery requires 12 kilograms of lithium, that puts a max cap across all automakers of 6.8 million cars annually if they monopolize the entire lithium supply of the world, leaving nothing behind for computers, cell phones, or battery storage for solar customers. In fact, on Tesla's website today, it says that by 2030, 8 years from now, the company wants to single-handedly produce 20 million electric cars per year, and 1,500 gigawatt hours of electric storage capacity, representing a 500 times increase in total storage to date. At 12 kilograms of lithium per vehicle, assuming they're all similar models, 20 million units will require 240 million kilos, or 240,000 tons of lithium. At 170 grams per kilowatt hour of storage, that's another 255 million kilos, or 255,000 tons of the metal. Tallied up, that's 495,000 tons required by Tesla alone per year, when the global lithium production over the past decade is 564,500 tons. And in comparison, the known global reserve of lithium weighs in at only 80 million tons. Since a quarter of that is owned by Bolivia, it makes sense why Musk publicly declared his support for a coup in that country. But that didn't end so well for him. So Musk better get that saltwater clay lithium processing perfected pretty quick, otherwise that goal is going to be yet another unfulfilled Musk promise. Time to wrap up on the original stated premise of this video, and that is, was Musk accurate in his often repeated 7-year-old statement that a very small corner of Utah could be used to power the entire US? And the answer to this is as follows. This type of statement illustrates perfectly the shallow depth of knowledge Musk has on things he speaks out on as some sort of inferred expert, which he is not. He knows a single piece of trivia. A gigawatt of energy hits every square kilometer on Earth. That's what he knows. So he tells you this trivia and makes it applicable to something he's currently selling that's supposedly saving humanity. He gives it no deeper thought, then adds embellishments that have no merit. He has done the exact same thing with Mars, basing his city of 1 million people on the fact that Mars has carbon dioxide in the extremely thin remaining atmosphere. Yes, in theory there is enough energy hitting a 10,000 square mile plot of land at the sun's zenith on summer days to power the entire US. No, this is not a small corner of Utah. It would be about 12% of the state if the panels are touching, and 20% of the state if the panels are spaced properly, if the system has 100% efficiency and no losses in storage or transmission. No, we do not have the resources required to construct the facility he teases. No, the battery farm required for that purpose would not be 1 single square mile. Supporting infrastructure, transmission lines, distribution and substations, land acquisition, and everything else that needs to be taken into account would easily add up to hundreds of trillions of dollars, if the nation were to be supplied by a single site such as this for electricity. And of course, as a single site, it would not only be a potential terrorist or military target, it could in theory be decimated by one single hailstorm. Regardless of size, these generation and storage systems would have to be replaced in a best case scenario every 25 years. It's already difficult to fathom that every solar panel in service today will be getting scrapped within the next 25 years, and that dilemma will only get worse moving forward. Best case for the battery farm would probably be a 20-year turnover if you're going by the warranty on their product, but most likely it would be half that based on Tesla's charted battery performance. And the world simply does not produce enough lithium globally to accommodate such a megaproject. However, Musk knew a single piece of trivia, so let's all pretend he's going to solve the world's energy crisis by extracting millions of tons of lithium using table salt. Preemptively, the automatic reaction for Musk fanboys will be to say that there are already massive solar projects being built around the world. So let's put that rebuttal into perspective. The largest solar facility in the world presently is a 2.2 gigawatt facility in the Hainan Prefecture in Qinghai, China. This sprawling facility covers 5,000 hectares, yet in comparison to Musk's Utah suggestion, it would be covered up completely by the green speck on this map. Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Common Sense Skeptic. It's been a while since we broke out the calculator to bring a little perspective to the world, and now that we've run the numbers, it's pretty obvious that the US is not going to be transitioning to 100% solar or BEVs. So best start figuring out what the next technology is going to be, and if it can in fact beat out hydro and nuclear. Just don't be holding your breath on fusion. Just for fun, we ran the math on Musk's 20 million cars per year, and if those 70 kilowatt hour battery packs were all recharged only twice per week, 52 weeks in a year, that will require another 145.6 terawatts of energy on top of current use. Thank you for your continued support of this channel. We truly appreciate your efforts in helping this community grow. Special thanks to the people who support us directly through Patreon and our YouTube memberships. To keep us growing, feel free to share links with your friends on social media, give the video a like, and ring that notification bell so that you'll know when the Common Sense Skeptic returns.